Welcome to today's session. My name is Kevin Hancock, and we're going to go ahead and get started in just 2 minutes. I want to give everyone a chance who may be running a little late, a chance to join up. So please just sit tight and we'll go ahead and get started at 2 minutes past the hour. Welcome everyone. If you've just joined us, I'm going to go ahead and start the session in 1 minute at 2 minutes past the hour, just to give those who might be running a little late a chance to join up. All right, everybody, let's go ahead and get started. So welcome. My name is Kevin Hancock, Director of Solutions here at Exostar. And today we're going to talk about NIST 800-171 and CMMC policies, how you simplify those and elevate your compliance efforts with Exostar PolicyPro. Today we're going to be demonstrating Exostar's PolicyPro application. If you'd like to follow along as we do that, you can go ahead and sign up for a free trial. The link for that sign up is there in the YouTube description. It takes approximately 2 minutes, and you'll have that time as we first give you some introductory material and kind of where we are in the CMMC NIST 800-171 process before we actually dive into the demonstration itself. So before I go into the formal presentation, just a few housekeeping details. So today's session is scheduled to last 45 minutes to an hour, and that does include question and answers. A portion of today's event is dedicated to answering your pressing questions, and we'll answer those questions that were submitted prior to today's event when you registered for the webinar. In case of an outage, please just wait a minute and refresh the page. We haven't had this happen yet, but just in case. For your convenience, there is a link in the YouTube description to a glossary of commonly used terms, acronyms, and initializations that will be referenced during today's webinar. This webinar is being recorded. It'll be available on demand via the Exostar resource library. That can be found at www.exostar.com/resources anytime after today's event. You can also reach the replay by using that YouTube link you received via email at your convenience. If you'd like to speak with one of our industry experts, if you want to get request a copy of this slide deck, you can reach out to us in really 2 different ways. You can reach us via email at cmmc-team@exostar.com, or you can go to our website, www.exostar.com, and there's a chat feature on every page. You can reach us in that method as well. So I'm joined on today's session, and the individual is going to be doing the demonstration of PolicyPro for you, by David Rowe of ISMS Solutions. David, you want to say hi?
Hi, thanks, Kevin. My name is David Rowe. I'm the Business Development Manager here at ISMS, and happy to show everyone the demo today.
Great, thanks, David. So before I turn it over to David, I just want to give everyone kind of an update on where we are in the CMMC rulemaking process and timeline. So we did have big news over the summer, right? The DoD did submit the CMMC rule to the OIR office within the Office of Management and Budget. They're currently in the review period, and that takes approximately 60 business days. That means we should see a release of that rule and it get published in the Federal Registry sometime fairly soon, because it should be at the end of September or the beginning of October. And the next step in there is how the rule is published in the Federal Registry. Most in the community expect it to come out as a notice of proposed rulemaking. What this means is that the rule goes back to the Department of Defense. It goes out for a public comment period, and the Department of Defense needs to address those public comments and adjust or adjudicate those within the rulemaking process as necessary. That process takes approximately 280 business days, so that would push out, if you will, the CMMC rule finalization to 2025 or very late in 2024. However, please keep in mind it can also be published in the Federal Registry as an interim final rule. That is a much quicker turnaround period, if you will, and it's typically then somewhere approximately 60 to 90 days before you may start to see the CMMC language start to appear in the DFARS clauses within your contracts. So please stay tuned. You know, as I mentioned, we'll expect to hear an update sometime late September or in October for how this rule is going to get published in the Federal Registry. The other news that came out in the spring of 2024, or I'm sorry, 2023, was that there was a SPRS revision within the DFARS clauses. So the Department of Defense published DFARS clause 252.204-7024. What this provided for was the ability of the Department of Defense procurement agency to take a look at your SPRS risk assessment score as part of their overall process in choosing vendors to fulfill contracts. So what that means is, as hopefully many of you know, one requirement in previous DFARS clauses is that you go into the SPRS system, the Supplier Performance Risk System, and enter in your score that you received during your self-assessment of how you're doing against fulfilling NIST 800-171 controls. That score is part of your overall risk assessment score within the system. And this allows DoD to consider that score in risk awards, or I'm sorry, in rewards of contracts. Sorry about that. Now, only DoD has access to the SPRS system. However, what we are hearing is that a number of prime contractors are now also asking their subcontractors what their SPRS score is and their plans to address it or raise it, if you will, utilizing that NIST 800-171 self-assessment as that baseline to create that score. So what do you need to do today? The first thing you need to do is to review your contracts. The contracts you've either received directly from the Department of Defense or those that you've received as a subcontractor to somebody who did receive that contract directly from the Department of Defense. And the reason for that is those contracts include DFARS clauses, right? Defense Federal Acquisition Regulations, and particular clauses that call out things you need to do. If within those contracts you have clauses 252.204-7012 or 7019, then you need to be compliant with NIST 800-171 if you receive controlled unclassified information as part of the fulfillment of that contract. Now, NIST 800-171 are requirements published by the National Institute of Standards, which lays out the controls you need to have in place to control and protect controlled unclassified information. There are 110 controls across 14 control families that tell you what you got to do to protect that information. 171 Alpha provides a guideline for you to assess how you're doing against those compliance requirements. 171 Alpha will basically allow you to do that self-assessment and score yourself. And that score is what you then enter into the SPRS system if you have that 7019 clause within your contract. But if you're struggling on where to get started, and if you're struggling on how to create those policies across those 14 control families that govern those 110 individual controls, then what we're going to talk about today, the Exostar PolicyPro application, is an application that can help you get there. What this provides are policy templates for each of those control families that allow you to then edit those policies for how you implement those controls within your particular organization. Obviously, many of you have been in this business for quite a while, so you may already have many policies in place. Those policies you can also submit into PolicyPro to have those graded and get that that score to determine with with some feedback on key areas that you need to improve to raise the effectiveness, if you will, and your compliance with that particular control. All of this basically just, it reduces that time to compliance. It allows you to get up and running more quickly. It allows you to leverage what you've already done. What it can also do is provide you those policies, obviously in a written format, that you can then download and make that as the policies that then govern your implementation statements, which then govern how the policies and procedures you have in place and the evidence, because all of those things are necessary as you go through those NIST 800-171 controls. Since this is offered out as a cloud solution, offered out as a service by Exostar, Exostar and ISMS will continue to improve and ramp or rev the application as NIST 800-171 changes over time. We know that's going to happen. We already know that NIST 800-171 Rev 3 is currently going through the public comment period, and we do expect that to be updated sometime next year. And so PolicyPro will evolve with that, and obviously will evolve with the CMMC standards as well. So to give you a demonstration on how this all works, I'm going to turn it over to David and let him explain that, and then we'll come back with some question and answer. So David, over to you.
Thanks, Kevin. So as Kevin mentioned with his overview, regardless of whether you're trying to work towards the current regulations and compliance requirements with NIST 800-171, or you're trying to get ahead and get ready for CMMC, PolicyPro is designed to help you and your organization get compliance with those standards and help you get started with that process. So as Kevin mentioned, whether you are really just getting started and you're unsure of exactly how to begin, you definitely want to check out the trial of PolicyPro in order to start building effective policies and that govern your organization's policies in order to effectively adhere to the various controls and practices lined out within the NIST 800-171. Also, maybe your organization is further along and you've already implemented those policies and you already have those policies in place. That's great, but you definitely want to have a second look and be able to utilize the tool in order to ensure that everything you have in those existing policies fits all of the requirements laid out within the standards itself. So we'll start off utilizing our policy building tool. And this is where you can come to if it is your first time or you're just trying to get your policies in place. You can utilize the policy builder and our templates in order to address all 14 different policy families. We do also have the level 1 policies as well, and so we can talk about that a little bit later on in the demo. For today's demo, we'll be walking through CMMC version 2.0, level 2. So as you can see here on the left-hand side, we've got the 14 different policy families, starting from access control all the way down to system and information integrity. You can also see all of these policy templates in the trial as well, so definitely feel free to check that out as well. Let me just try to move this here. All right, so on your first time through on the platform, you'll receive this pop-up here, which is a brief explanation of what policies are, as well as some of the other documents your organization should have already have in place, or if you do not, we provide templates to those as well. So things like the gap assessment, risk register, POAM, as well as the SSP. The templates are pretty bare bones, so if you do need to need a little bit more assistance or guidance in terms of creating that POAM as well as the SSP, there is a companion product that Kevin will talk about a little bit later in this webinar called Certification Assistant. There's a free trial to that as well, but for today's demo, we'll be focusing primarily on policies. So you can access that at any time as well by clicking on the policy planning information hyperlink located on the right-hand corner. All right, so each time you click on a policy family domain, in this case, access control, you'll come to our prepare, gather, and consult page. Our prepare, gather, and consult page shows you everything you'll need to prepare prior to even getting started with the template itself, so that you can maximize your time and efficiency as you're working through the policies. For example, it might include things like gathering your organization's processes, procedures, and various other documentations related to these various access control topics. Additionally, it'll tell you who you might need to bring in, whether it's internal or external stakeholders within your organization. For example, it could include your network administrator, head of IT, or CISO, and then any sort of outside contractors if applicable. So those might include your IT consultants, MSPs, and MSSPs if you do utilize them. Once you have all of that prepared, you can then click on the Ready Get Started button here, and that will take you to the actual policy template. Every policy template is broken out into a couple different sections. We've got the header, which includes your organization name, the department or departments this policy will fall under, the issue date for when you finalize this version of your policy, approved by, and then the tracking number can be utilized to keep track of your version numbers as you work through iterations of your policy. The other sections include the purpose, the scope, and the individual practices. So we've broken out all 110 practices into each section of its own. And each practice is going to give you a couple different pieces of information. It's going to give you the identifier here for that practice, so access control 3.1.1. It'll give you what that practice is, which is about limiting information system access to authorized users, processes acting on behalf of authorized users or devices. And underneath each of the practices, what you'll see are some guidelines. And the guidelines will help you as you're crafting the narrative around the policies and you're working through editing each practice. You'll know exactly what sort of information and content needs to be added within the policy templates themselves. To open up the practice, you'll click on the pencil icon here located on the right-hand side, and that will bring up the actual pop-up for 3.1.1. So we can see that our policy for this section will be about our organization's account creation, work from home, and bring your own device policy. A couple notes as you're working through these policies and working on editing and revising them. First, ensure that you're reading through the entirety of the policy. You want to make sure that everything written here reflects what your organization has already implemented, or if you haven't implemented this particular practice yet, then make sure you customize it to fit what your organization will implement in the future. Additionally, there are going to be certain sections you want to pay particular attention to and customize in order to have a policy that reflects what your organization's implementations are. For example, here in the first paragraph, it says all account creations will be submitted by the requesting department manager to the IT support email address for completion using the account request ticketing system or other process. So there within the account request ticketing system, depending on if you are utilizing a ticketing system, you'll fill in whatever system that is. If you're not using a ticketing system, then whatever other process it is you're utilizing, you want to make sure you fill it in based on your implementations. Another example is there in the second bullet where it says systems administrators and members of the IT support team shall respond and act accordingly to requests within a timely fashion, offering at least a blank hour turnaround for account creation. So there in the blank hour turnaround, you want to make sure to fill in however long it takes your organization to actually fill and create those accounts. Once you've made all those changes, you'll then save any changes you've made, and it'll timestamp it as well as the user who made that change. If you do have multiple users working on the platform, you can see exactly which practices have been worked on and which ones still need to be customized and worked on. Once you've done all of that, assuming you've gone through all of those different sections in the practices, you'll then click on this export button, and that's important for two reasons. One, it'll show you all of those sections that you haven't yet customized, so these are all the ones I still need to work on. But assuming I've done that work and I'm ready to export it, it'll save a local, it'll save a Word document to my local hard drive in order to get to the next part of the process, which is that policy assessment piece. So we'll go ahead and move on to the policy assessment here. And the policy assessment tool is where you can assess and receive some different metrics surrounding your particular policy. This is where, when I talked about earlier on in the demo, whether you're utilizing our policy builder and creating policies from our templates, or maybe you already have existing policies, you want to make sure to come to the policy assessment part and upload those documents in order to ensure that it's covering everything it needs to cover. So we'll go ahead and attach an access control policy here. And as long as it's in doc, docx, or PDF, we can analyze that particular policy. So we'll go ahead and submit this here, and we can see some different metrics surrounding the policy I've just uploaded. We want a little bit deeper dive and see exactly how my policy is done. So we'll click on this detailed scorecard here to view missing key phrases, and that will bring up this pop-up. So the overall assessment for this particular policy that I've uploaded is that it appears relevant in size, scope, and organizational customization. The overall assessment is comprised of three different metrics: the relevance, the model similarity, and the word count. The relevance is how many key terms or phrases are included in your policy. The higher that is, the higher the relevance and therefore overall assessment is going to be. The model similarity compares your policy that you've uploaded to our model documents. And we do that for two reasons. One, to ensure that it's been appropriately customized to fit your organization and your organization's implementations. The second reason is to ensure that it's covering everything it needs to cover. Finally, the word count is simply to determine whether it's long enough in order to accurately assess your policy. If it shows that the word count is too short, you can either increase the length of your policy if it makes sense to do so, or you can just kind of note that some of the other assessments and overall score might not be nearly as accurate due to not enough context surrounding that document. The overall score for this particular policy is 70.7%, and a note about the overall score is that it is not like an academic score, meaning 90% as an A, 80% as a B. The overall score is a relevance-based question and a threshold question, so meaning anything above a 50% is a relevant document. And we can talk a little bit more further on in the demo about how you can utilize the overall score to see how your policies are doing. Now, all of that's kind of the high-level metrics of how my policy is done, but what you're probably most interested in is how do I know what parts I'm missing and how do I actually improve my policy? And you can do that through our key elements not included, or KENNY for short. We've got two different types of KENNYs. We've got control KENNYs and general KENNYs. The first control KENNY here, CUI non-public information, that is my first key term or phrase that's missing within my policy, and I should be looking to revise and include it in my policy to ensure that I'm covering a very important control, which is access control 3.1.22. So that control KENNY there is tied directly to 3.1.22, controlling information posted or processed on publicly accessible information systems. Underneath that, we provide the discussion, and this discussion comes directly from the NIST 800-171/CMMC practices, and so you don't have to flip back and forth trying to figure out exactly what 3.1.22 is talking about. Additionally, the documents for examination are going to be other documents, records, or materials that your organization might already have that can help you address that particular control KENNY. For example, it could include things like your security plan or a list of users authorized to post publicly accessible content. The documents for examination are going to be a little bit different based on each of the control KENNYs. So it'll help you address it as you're working on revising your policies. Certain control KENNYs, for example, FIPS here, is going to be tied to multiple controls. And what I mean by that is we can see under here it's tied to 3.1.13 as well as 3.1.17. So in the case of FIPS, you want to ensure that you're addressing it in each control that it's referenced under. We also have what we call general policy KENNY terms, and you can notice that there's no collapse all, expand all button here. And the reason for that is these key terms and phrases are not tied to a specific control. They're more generic to the type of policy that you've uploaded. So in this case, an access control policy. It might be more generic to a particular cybersecurity or maybe multiple non-specific controls. So with the combination of those two types of KENNYs as well as the overall assessment, you'll be able to accurately assess and revise your policies in order to ensure that you're covering everything you need to cover. And in particular, as these standards change, you want to make sure to keep up to date with any changes and ensure that all of the new material is reflected within your policies. One last feature I want to talk about here in the policy assessment is this management approval. So I'll go ahead and click this here, and we can talk about it further in our dashboard. So the dashboard is where you'll come to see all your progress and your work throughout the platform, whether you're creating policies, utilizing our policy builder and our templates, or you're uploading policies and getting assessments in our policy assessment portion of the tool. You'll see all of that here in the dashboard. Additionally, you'll see underneath each of the policy names, you'll notice the management approval. The one in the green check mark with the management approved is my latest version of my policy. And that's going to be important for a couple different reasons. One, you want to ensure that your organization is following the same version of the policy. So as you work on revising your policies, you want to ensure that everyone is following the same version of it within your organization, as well as senior management has actually seen and reviewed your policies. So whether you're doing an internal audit or an external audit, you want to be able to show that indeed senior management has seen and approved of these particular policies. You'll also be able to see exactly who approved it and when they approved it as well. You'll also notice those different metrics I mentioned earlier here, whether it's the overall metrics or the control and general Kennys, as well as that overall score I mentioned. So as you're working on revising and updating your policies based on your Kennys, you'll see those Kenny numbers reduce and your overall score trending upwards. So as long as that score is trending upwards and it's above a 50%, you know you're on the right path towards getting a good policy here. One last feature I want to talk about is our reference library. So at any time, whether you're creating policies or assessing policies, if you come into some topic that you're unsure of how to address, you can always come to our reference library, which contains various helpful links and resources across the web directly from the NIST Institute themselves. And you can scroll to the appropriate section or click on one of the table of contents to come to the relevant section. And let's say one of your Kennys was related to firewalls and VPNs. Maybe you're unsure how to address that in a policy. You can come here for some additional information as well. As I mentioned earlier, all of this was done for level 2, which are the 14 policy families and the 110 practices. You can easily swap to a level 1. Maybe you know for sure that you don't handle, transmit, or process CUI in any way. And so you're going to that level 1. You can come here, select that level 1 button, work on the 6 different policies for level 1, as well as the 17 practices. And then in the future, if at any time you start to maybe get new work, new contracts, and you have to go for that level 2, it's easy to swap over to that level 2 and work on the additional policies that you need to work on. Hopefully this has been a helpful overview and demo of the platform. Again, policies are a great first step into compliance around the NIST 800-171, as well as CMMC. It is an important aspect of your cybersecurity so that everyone in your organization knows exactly what they need to do in order to protect that CUI. I'll turn it over to Kevin now so he can close up with some Q&A as well. Thanks, everyone, and hope this has been helpful.
Thank you, David. Share back out. All right. So as David mentioned in his presentation, this solution, PolicyPro, is part of Exostar's CMMC Ready suite. It includes a companion product, Certification Assistant, and Certification Assistant walks you through a NIST 800-171 self-assessment, allows you to save those policies that you created out in PolicyPro out, link those policies into Certification Assistant, and then further define those with the procedures, the evidence that ensures that you are compliant with that particular individual control as you seek to get compliant with all 110 controls. Now, if instead you need a more practical application, one where you have a secure enclave that provides you that location to protect and transmit and work on that controlled unclassified information, Exostar has another application, Exostar's Managed Microsoft 365 for CMMC compliance. This provides just that, a secure enclave up in GCC High where organizations can create, using Microsoft Teams, a team workspace that provides that place to store, process, and transmit that controlled unclassified information. This provides an Exostar application embedded within the Teams interface, which creates custom roles, custom methods to create teams, direct federation with Exostar's identity and access management platform to provide the multi-factor authentication for users and the vetting of users and organizations before you invite them into the platform itself. And then if you just need some assistance in doing any of this, right? I don't have the staff, I don't have the resources to do this myself. I'd like to engage with a third party to either help me on the way or do an assessment of where I am in the process. You can use Exostar does have a host of other service providers that act as partners to Exostar that can do those readiness assessments for you. If you wouldn't mind, there is an exit poll there in the YouTube description. We'd love to get your feedback on this particular webinar, as well as your thoughts on additional topics you'd like us to cover in future webinars. And now we're going to jump to the questions that we received when you registered for this webinar itself. So these are the three we received. So should we prepare for readiness C3PAO assessment if none of our contracts include the requirement at this stage? So none of the contracts today include a requirement for that C3PAO assessment. That will only take effect when CMMC itself is put in place and finalized. However, if you do have those clauses in your contract around NIST 800-171 because you receive, process, or transmit controlled unclassified information, you really should get ready for those because in those cases you will also have to comply with CMMC when it comes down, because that, if you will, that implies that you do receive controlled unclassified information and you need to protect it. So again, look at what you've got today, look at what your requirements are, and understand if you're in that group that has those clauses in your contract, if you're an organization that receives controlled unclassified information, then you'll need to be ready for that third party assessment of how you're doing against those NIST 800-171 controls. So David, you were going to take number 2. Are you addressing the NFOs in the policies?
Yes, thanks, Kevin. And let me just quickly share my screen because it can be a little bit easy to miss in the platform.
Sure.
So, all right, so if I go back into our policy builder, we do address both the NFO controls as well as the NCO controls. So here, right underneath the scope, you can click on this hyperlink here, and that will take you to the NCO controls as well as the NFO controls. And similarly, same type of situation here where you can click on the pencil icon to get to the templates for both the NCO controls as well as the NFO controls, and export them as well. So they are a little bit separate from the actual policy template here, but again, you can gain access to both the NFO and NCO control templates as well.
Great, thanks, David. Share back out again. Oops, that did not work as expected. There we go. Oops. So how does NIST CMMC compliant policy compare to CIS V8, and what is the path forward? So NIST and CMMC refer, if you will, really to those clauses that are required by the Department of Defense. And NIST publishes these controls, right? That's the National Institute of Standards who creates these policies. CIS is the cybersecurity group that also produces their own best practices around cybersecurity. And so if you've got a system and you use CIS as that, it's a very good system in that it's much more what I'd say prescriptive in how you should do something. right? And how you should set password policies, how you should do access control, etc. So those are a great base on how you've implemented a particular policy within NIST 800-171. So if you've already got those policies completed, then PolicyPro is a great companion because you can then take those policies that you've written for CIS V8 and feed them into PolicyPro and get that score on how they compare to what's necessary for NIST 800-171. You'll get that numeric score, those key indicators as David walked you through in the demonstration, and that'll provide you maybe some areas you need to address, maybe some areas that weren't quite addressed within the CIS 8 control, and reuse, if you will, and not waste time, waste work, etc., for other standards that you might be addressing with and across your organization. So hopefully that provided you answers to your questions, and we thank you for submitting those. If you're interested, Exostar has a number of different events coming up and on a monthly basis. For those applications that are part of the CMMC Ready Suite, we offer sessions like this where you see those products in action. We have one for Certification Assistant. We also have a weekly one on our managed Microsoft 365 for CMMC compliance. All of those include a demonstration of the product, a chance to submit your questions, get those questions answered. We do also offer a monthly general CMMC webinar. All of these you can sign up on our website at www.exostar.com/events. We also offer links to a number of other areas that can give you additional information and help in this area. That includes that partner listing of partners that can help you throughout the CMMC process. If you'd like to sign up for those free trials of PolicyPro or Certification Assistant, both those products are available for a free trial from the Exostar website. You can also see the link for the PolicyPro trial there in the description in the YouTube channel today. So please take advantage of those. And again, if you've got some time, please fill out that exit poll. Let us know your feedback. Let us know how we did today. Let us know any additional topics you'd like to hear about. So I want to thank David for helping me out today, and I want to thank all of you for coming. Again, if you have additional questions, you can email us at cmmc-pp@exostar.com, and we'll be happy to get those questions answered for you. So thanks again, and have a great rest of the day.